Orchestra Zoom concert. Tonight's concert features the works of three phenomenal composers: James Reese Europe, Howlett Peter Smith, and Dr. Joyce Solomon Mormon. Again, welcome and thank you.
James Reese Europe studied violin with Enrico Hurley and Joseph Douglas, son of Frederick Douglass. He was a prolific composer, over 30 marches and dances composed. By 1889, his family left their home in Mobile, Alabama, moving to Washington, D.C. In 1905, seeking employment, Europe relocated to New York. There, he gained employment by freelancing as a pianist at nightclubs, and later was appointed as the musical director of the Jolly John Larkin Company. In 1906, Europe became musical director of Bob Cole Johnson Brothers Show. In 1910, Europe served as conductor of the Clef Club Symphony Orchestra, which performed at Carnegie Hall, which boasted of having 125 members, some who played mandolins and some who played banjos. This orchestra served as a marketing tool for the employment of its 125 black musicians. In 1917, he organized an all-black U.S. 15th Infantry Band during World War I, which toured France, performing for heads of state and the Congress of Women in Paris in 1918. Its reputation was, according to the New York Times, the best military band in the world. As a seminal figure in jazz, Europe became the music director for dancers Irene and Vernon Castle, touring across the United States and abroad. In 1914, Europe composed the famous Castle House Rag. Castle House Rag was Europe's best-known song, and it was composed for the dance team Vernon and Irene Castle. The foxtrot dance was invented by Europe and collaborator Dabney and was intended to be danced to this song. Its riveting melodies and highly syncopated rhythms repeat, modulate, and introduce multi-thematic material. Composed in the ragtime derived structure, it consists of a slow introduction in dance trio form A-B-A-C, followed by a bridge, and repeats the C. This piece has been revived by Janice White with a new orchestration from the piano manuscript held at the Library of Congress. Here is James Reese Europe's Castle House Rag. Howlett Peter Smith, composer, jazz pianist. Mr. Smith is a graduate of the University of Arizona, former adjunct professor of music at El Camino College and composer of songs and musicals. At the age of 14, Smith debuted at churches and clubs, performing on Broadway, television, and radio for General Hospital, All My Children, and the Arthur Godfrey Network radio show. A prolific composer, Smith's most popular songs include Chitlins at the White House, in the White House, Let's Go Where the Grass is Greener, and Little Altar Boy. In 2010, he completed the wedding music Glory Hallelujah Variations, including 16 variations reflecting a wide range of music stylings from Baroque to jazz, dedicated to Miss Shaheed. Does anybody still remember? This piece featured originally an actor and baritone Rod Perry from SWAT. Premiered and recorded this tune with the composer and jazz pianist Howlett Smith. In August 2011, it was the composer Howlett Smith who premiered Does Anybody Still Remember at Howard University with the African American Chamber Music Society Orchestra for the King Monument Celebration Concert. This phenomenally gifted and prolific composer, Howlett Smith, describes the life work, challenges, and dedication of the civil rights leader, Dr. Martin Luther King. This song is composed in standard verse, chorus, A-B binary form with introduction and interlude melodic constructs borrowed from the civil rights anthem, We Shall Overcome. Although Smith employs tonal harmony, his signature compositional style frequently employs sequences, which unifies the composition. Smith's typical sequential phrase pattern begins at the chorus with Does Anybody Still Remember? Descending by half step from E flat to D and down a successive whole step from D to C. Featuring Bates, Ralph Pettiford, here is Does Anybody Still Remember? Might I ask everyone to please mute their audio, please? I need someone to mute their audio. Thank you so much.
Then Dr. King told us the truth and took command. He taught us how to fight without a sword or gun. He had a There was a time when fear and hate spread through our land. Then Dr. King told us the truth and took command. He taught us how to fight without a sword or gun. He had a dream that strife would be undone. Does anybody still remember? Does anybody still remember? Does anybody still remember what he did and what he said? Now the world's a little better place where children can laugh and sing. Does anybody still remember Martin Luther King? Leading the crowds, he faced the dogs, the clubs, the guns. He slept in jails to free our daughters and our sons. He He was a man who walked with God his short life through. Yes, Martin died standing up for me and you. Does anybody still remember? Does anybody still remember? Does anybody still remember what he did and what he said? Now the world's a little better place where children can laugh and sing. Does anybody still remember Martin Luther King? Once in a while we hear the words he preached so well, but we forget his wife and children went through hell. What could they do? They always knew he might be killed. Then Martin was shot and his mighty voice was still. Does anybody still remember? Does anybody still remember? Does anybody still remember what he did and what he said? Now the world's a little better place where children can laugh and sing. Does anybody still remember Martin Luther King? Does anybody still remember? Does anybody still remember? Does anybody still remember what he did and what he said? Now the world's a little better place where children can laugh and sing. Does anybody still remember Martin Luther King? Now the world's a little better place where children can laugh and sing. Does anybody still remember Martin Luther King?
Dr. Joyce Solomon Mormon. She was born in the campus hospital of Tuskegee Institute in Tuskegee, Alabama. Her childhood was spent in Columbia, South Carolina, where she attended segregated public elementary and high schools. She earned the Bachelor of Arts degree from Vassar College, Master of Arts degree from Rutgers University, Master of Fine Arts degree from Sarah Lawrence College, and a doctoral degree from Columbia University. In 1990, she was a finalist in the first Detroit African American Composers Competition. Her compositions have been performed by numerous incredible artists. She has been commissioned by the Plymouth Chorus and Orchestra of Minneapolis, Minnesota, the Cygnus Chamber Ensemble, Rejoice Ensemble, and North-South Consonants of New York City, Turn On the Music of New Jersey, Louise Toppin, soprano, and Vienna Modern Masters. Miss Mormon was a winner of the Vienna Modern Masters 1998 Millennium Commission Competition. The awards included a concert performance, recording, and publication of an orchestral work for international distribution. She received honorable mention in the International Alliance for Women in Music competition for the year 2000, Women of Color Commission, and she received a performance award in the Andy Warhol Composers Competition sponsored by the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts in August of 2000. In 2004, her opera, Elegies for the Fallen.
Vince,
Dr. Moore, yes.
we want to thank you, and so we want to have our Vice President, Billy Demry, continue on that
Okay.
note from there. Unmute yourself, Billy. We can't hear you.
Okay, I'm here.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to also share that Dr. Mormon has performed at Lincoln Center, Carnegie Hall, University of California, Irvine, the North-South Chamber Orchestra in 2013 and 2016, and other performances for our Afro-American Chamber Music Society Orchestra. And she's also performed in Vienna, Austria, at the International Festival of New Music for chorus as well as for orchestra. I would like to also mention that Dr. Mormon is listed in Baker's Biographical Dictionary of Music and in Helen Walker Hill's Black Women Composers. And she's also in Evelyn White's Choral Music by African American Composers in 1996. Currently, Dr. Mormon is a retired music professor at Barra of Manhattan Community College. It is our indeed honor to introduce this outstanding African American composer, Dr. Joyce Solomon Mormon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Featuring Nolan Shahid on trumpet.
And we want to give Joyce the opportunity to introduce her pieces. So go ahead. And while she's doing that, Vince, would you check the sound? See if you can enhance,
Okay, here's what I
optimize
need
the
you to
sound.
do. Can you make me the co-host? Thereby I can use my original sound. However, I don't know if you'd still be able to share screen, but if I could use my original sound, I'm sure it would sound better.
Okay. We'll work on that.
Okay,
Okay,
so
go ahead, Joyce. You can unmute yourself and introduce your pieces, please.
Okay, well, two of my compositions are going to be performed. I'm not sure in what order. Are you going to do Race Riot first? Janice?
yes.
Yeah, okay, all right, good. Okay, well, Race Riot was written in 2001 for a competition sponsored by the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts and the Philadelphia Classical Symphony. And this competition was in conjunction with an exhibition of Andy Warhol's paintings at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. So images of Warhol's paintings were put online and composers were asked to write a composition inspired by one of his paintings. And so I looked at the paintings, and when I saw Riot 1964, I thought, oh, I can write that piece. I don't know why, but for some reason that was my reaction. And so I wrote a trio for tenor saxophone, B-flat trumpet, and drum set. 4 winners were selected, and the 4 compositions were performed in September 2001 at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, while they were also hosting the exhibition of Andy Warhol's paintings. Well, in March, I believe, Janice asked me if I had any other compositions I could send her. She already had the piano concerto, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. And so I sent her Race Riot, the trio, and she said, well, Joyce, we're going to have a orchestra. You know, this is just a trio. It's just for 3 instruments. You need to enlarge this and write it, you know, orchestrate it. So my reaction at first was, I like the trio. Why? I like the trio. Why should I orchestrate it? But at any rate, I thought about it, and I don't know, one day in April, it was like, you know, a light went off in my brain, and I said, oh, I think I have some ideas for what I can do as far as orchestrating and enlarging Race Riot. So I did it. You know, I orchestrated it. It's for a chamber orchestra now. It's the instrumentation now is flute, oboe, clarinet, bassoon, B-flat trumpet. There's percussion. The percussion is snare drum, 2 tom-toms, bass drum. What else? Percussion. What other percussion? Oh, cymbals. And there's a siren. I think I've named all the percussion instruments. And then, of course, the strings. The strings are violin, viola, cello, and bass. So.
And I think who's handling the bass? I think that's Carl. So, all right.
Okay, so this will be the first performance of the orchestrated version of Race Riot. All right, and then Summer, you want me to go ahead and talk?
No.
Oh, wait.
Yes, let's wait.
All right. Thank you.
Unmute yourself so we can hear the applause. Okay.
Oh, too late.
Thank you for that performance. Should we go on to Summer?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see. I'm a pianist as well as a composer, and I suppose I always wanted to write a piano concerto, but when I was younger and working multiple part-time teaching jobs at private music schools in New York City, it didn't leave me with a whole lot of time for composition. And so I applied for grants and got turned down. So at any rate, a couple of years ago, I guess 2016, I decided, well, maybe I'll try applying again and try writing a piano concerto. And so at this point, though, I was working at Borough Manhattan Community College, and I could apply for a city university. Borough Manhattan Community College is part of the City University of New York system. So I could apply for a City University of New York grant. And I applied really thinking that I would get the same result that I got when I was younger, and I was applying for grants to do a piano concerto. But this time, lo and behold, they said yes. And so it didn't really mean that I didn't have to work. I still had to teach, but instead of teaching 5 courses a semester, I only had to teach 4 courses. So I got 1 course release time is basically what I got to do the piece. But I received the grant in the spring of 2017. And so I actually started working on the piece in the summer of 2017. And the course release time was for the fall of 2017. And so the first movement, it is in 3 movements. Most concertos are in 3 movements. The first movement is simply a summer day in the South. I actually got inspired to write that first movement here in Columbia, South Carolina, sitting out on my patio and listening to the birds and the grasshoppers, and you know, all the sounds you hear. Although I'm not in the country, so to speak, I do live in the city, but in southern cities, you have nice yards. And so you have birds and squirrels and grasshoppers and all many of the creatures that you find in the woods. So I wrote the first movement and wasn't sure whether I could write a second and a third movement, but then again, a light went off in my brain, and I thought about the fact that I had spent a very interesting summer in Tuskegee, Alabama. I was actually born in Tuskegee, Alabama. And when I was young, I spent, many summers there. And so the summer of 1957 was the summer of the Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott, and also the Tuskegee boycott. The Montgomery boycott was what propelled Martin Luther King to the nation's attention. And the Tuskegee boycott did not receive as much publicity, but it was just as important. The Montgomery boycott was about the fact that both Black people and white people could ride the buses. If you were Black, you had to go to the back of the bus. If you were white, you could sit in the front of the bus. And if you were Black and unfortunately you got on the bus, and then a whole lot of white people got on the bus and filled up all the seats in front of you, the bus driver or somebody else got on, and the bus driver could actually ask you to get up and move and let the white person sit down. So the Black people of Montgomery decided to simply walk the work. There were also carpools. They simply did take the city buses. And the city, of course, didn't realize what an economic force Black people were until that boycott. And when all the Black people stopped riding the buses, the bus system, the transportation system started experiencing financial problems. So the solution was simply to let Black people ride the buses and not to make them sit in the back. So eventually, I think it went on for about 2 years. And the buses then were integrated. And this sort of, although the boycott was only in Montgomery, other cities in the South also decided to integrate their bus systems. In Tuskegee, the Alabama legislature decided to gerrymander the town of Tuskegee. And what they did was that they put most of the Black people outside of the city limits. They redrew the city boundaries so that most Black people would be outside the town and would not be able to vote in the elections, in the town's elections. They were afraid that Black people would start electing Black officials. And so the Black people of Tuskegee, and also we then referred to it as Tuskegee Institute, now it's Tuskegee University, boycotted all of the white businesses in the town of Tuskegee. Many of the businesses went bankrupt. This boycott also went on for, I think, about 2 years. And after many white businessmen lost their shirts, so to speak, or went bankrupt, the Alabama legislature decided, oh, maybe we made a mistake. And so they then withdrew the newly imposed town boundaries, which excluded most Black people. They redrew that plan and went back to the old boundaries where a lot of Black people were now included within the boundaries of the town and could vote in the town's election. So since then, Tuskegee has had Black city officials, Black mayors, etc. So, and of course today, with the voting power of Black people in the South, many towns and cities in the South have Black officials. Where I'm living here today in Columbia, South Carolina, we have a Black mayor, a Black city manager, a Black fire chief, so on. So the second movement refers to the Alabama boycotts in the summer of 1957. The boycotts, the Tuskegee boycott, the leader was a dean at Tuskegee University by the name of Charles Gomillion. And there would be nightly church meetings. I would go with my aunt and uncle and my cousin to the church meetings where Dean Gomillion would speak, but also occasionally Martin Luther King would come over to Tuskegee and speak at the church meetings there in Tuskegee. And the piece actually begins with the African-American spiritual Kumbaya, which is played by the piano soloist. In the middle of the piece, you hear the spiritual "We Shall Overcome." And then at the end of the piece, you will hear superimpose the two songs played by the pianist.
And two different keys too.
Right, in two different keys, in B major and A major, right?
Yes.
In D major and A major, yeah.
D major and A.
Right, okay. And then the third movement, which I refer to as 2015, because in the year 2015, I was here in Columbia when the Confederate flag was removed from the grounds of the state capitol building and put in a museum. So of course, this was a very joyous occasion. Unfortunately, the removal of the flag was brought about by a very tragic occasion when in June of 2015, a young white male was invited into a prayer meeting at, I believe it was Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina, and he proceeded to pull out a gun and just shoot the people and kill the people, most of the people who were there at the prayer meeting. So the reaction of South Carolina's governor at that time, Nikki Haley, was to remove the Confederate flag from the State House grounds. In the third movement, in the middle of the third movement, you will hear a chant that's sung in African-American churches. It's just a little snippet of that chant at first. It's sung in African-American churches, and it is the chant for the Lord's Prayer. And then at the end of the movement actually also ends with that chant. So if there aren't, are there any questions? If there aren't any questions, I guess we'll go on and
We'll take the questions at the end.
Okay, all right. Well, let's hear the recording. I hope you enjoy it.
Okay, you can unmute and applaud now. Unmute.
Ooh,
Bravo! Bravo!
Doesn't sound like 70 people. Where are you? Okay, you're around there somewhere. Well,
thank you. Thank you for the performance. I'm just waiting for a live performance.
I know, just doesn't sound the same. Um, But it was quite a challenging work for everyone. Everyone had a challenge, which was good. Gave us something to play for sure. And so thank you for your compositions, your great compositions, very creative works. I would like to defer back to Vince. And if you could open the floor up for Q&A, if anyone has any questions for Dr. Joyce Solomon Mormon, you may proceed to ask them at this time. Thank you again for attending our live Zoom concert.
For everyone, I think that we did not emphasize the brilliant piano playing by Professor Janice White just now. She was really, really brilliant. Great job, Janice.
Thank you so much. I'll clap for myself.
Great work.
Oh. So I believe we're supposed to premiere this also in Atlanta, Dr. Mormon. The
Well,
same
it's a
work
possibility. It's a possibility.
in the fall. So again, thank you, and back to Vince to open the floor for any comments. And also feel free to send comments to our email, aacmsorchestra@gmail.com. Go on our website at aacmsorchestra.weebly.com as well. And feel free to leave a donation. .org, aacmsorchestra.org. Okay. You can mute yourself if you'd like to speak, and we'd love to hear your comments and responses to our concert.
Well, I'd just like to thank everybody who decided to join in. I see we have, I don't know, it says 49 participants, so I think that's really a good number of people who decided to join us. So I did send out some emails to some friends, and I imagine that there are some people. I'm in Columbia, South Carolina, so I imagine there are a few people listening in who are here in Columbia. And I'd sent emails to friends who may be elsewhere also, Maine, places around the country. So I think we have a very good turnout. So thank you, everyone. And
Yes.
especially thank you, Janice, for arranging this and for playing the piano part. Thank you.
Yes. You're welcome. And thanks to Nolan, also our recording technician and trumpeter.
Brilliant man.
Thank you. My
Brilliant
pleasure.
man.
Thank you very much.
Nice job. You know, Janice, we might want to mention to everyone that over the last several weeks, we've had master classes via Zoom with high school students in Los Angeles, and they got to meet Dr. Mormon. And the lens was meeting a living composer. So many of our young kids, they have not had the opportunity to actually ask questions and to have contact with a prolific composer. And so there really was no bad question. So maybe we can all look at it from the lens of being I don't know, 12, 13, 14-year-old student and having the opportunity to quiz a composer about how they do what they do, why they do what they do. Dr. Mormon?
Yes?
When did you know you wanted to be a composer?
Well, I was actually a late bloomer. I took my first composition class actually when I was in graduate school. My intention first was to be a pianist. and I just decided to take a composition class one semester in graduate school, and enjoyed it, and decided that I was really too nervous to be a pianist, and that composition was much more fun. It was much more fun to write the music, give it to somebody else to perform, and sit and enjoy the performance. So,
Who were some of your influences? What composers did you hear or study or you were inspired by?
well, I would like to, well, I suppose I've been influenced by a lot of different people. I studied at Sarah Lawrence College with Meyer Kufferman.
Hmm.
He wrote music that was influenced by jazz. I think as a young man, he actually played in a jazz band. So his music influenced me. I was influenced, of course, by Stravinsky, who was such a great composer. And you know, Stravinsky wrote for jazz bands also.
Absolutely.
um, and many others, but to name all of them, gee whiz, I think I'll just stick with naming Meyer Kufferman and
Yeah, that's fine.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. What questions? If you can unmute and jump in, that's perfectly fine.
I wanted to say I really, truly enjoyed the race riot and the history that Dr. Mormon gave us regarding that, took us through the civil rights movement and, starting with Reese Europe and his ragtime, and then coming on through with Howard Smith's music about remembering what Dr. King did. And then she tied it all together with the race riot. And the race riot to me was so powerful because, you could hear all the elements of a riot. And it sounded like what we just had in Los Angeles recently, all the sounds of the sirens and, people hollering and banging and the noise. The cacophony, it was just wonderful to hear that, and then to have her tie it all in with the history of the Montgomery Boycott and the Tuskegee Boycott and the gerrymandering, and these are the same things that we're fighting today.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same old fight that we're going through, but through it all, there's this hope. And when she did, the civil rights song repeatedly, that just showed that hope is still alive, and we still have that fight. So I thank you so much, Dr. Mormon, for your work, and continue to compose for us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Dr. Mormon, we have a question in the chat here. It comes from Mr. John Malvo, a wonderful patron and supporter of the arts. He has a question for Dr. Mormon. He says, I have a friend in South Carolina who often shares history about Gullah people and their heritage. Are you familiar
Gullah.
with Gullah history?
Gullah.
The Gullah. The Gullah. I need my glasses. The Gullah history. And have you considered composing a work speaking to that history and culture? The Gullah people.
No, I haven't, and perhaps I should.
Thank you, Mr. Malvo.
Because the Gullah people are the people who live on the coast and the islands off of the coast of South Carolina and Georgia, northern Georgia and South Carolina. And I've traveled to those islands many times. I've traveled to the islands, to Hilton Head, St. Helena's Island. So I know that area. I actually love it. It's beautiful. The islands are beautiful. So yes, maybe that's something I should plan on doing.
That's a very good point and quick question Mr. Malvo brings up, I think a lot of us are familiar with music that's written for the horses on the barrier islands over there. There's some wild horses that have been there for generations. We've heard a lot of music about that, but the Gullah people. Thank you, Mr. Malvo, for bringing that up. Let's see. I think we have time for maybe one more question, Professor White.
Okay.
You can type it in the chat. You can express it.
Francisco, are you on? Francisco and Carl?
I am here. The
Okay.
thing is, I'm looking in the big screen and the computer's on the side.
Okay. Well, then can you give us a question or comment about the music that you
Well,
played?
the music is just amazing, and it's so inspirational, and it's very challenging, like you said, to play that music, but it's just a wonderful experience to be able to do such a wonderful work. And I hope that many orchestras get to perform it very soon. That music that it needs to be made popular, so that people get to hear it. And I'm pleased to be able to play that. So now I want to play a novo concerto from a composer.
That's right.
Yeah, that would be great.
Carl, are you on? You played bass.
Yes, I'm
Any
here.
other players on? Do we have anybody with a question?
Yes,
I
I'm
have
here.
another question, Denise. I have a question.
Yes. Liz.
Okay, I wanted to ask Dr. Mormon, after she orchestrated Race Riot, was she happy with that versus the piece that she had done for with less instruments? How
The
did she
trio setting.
find the trio setting? Yes.
Dr. Mormon, did you hear that?
I did hear that. Yes, I did hear.
Okay.
Well, I don't know right now if I can compare the two. Certainly the quality of the sounds would be better in a live performance. There was some distortion because of I don't know. Over the internet, you don't necessarily get the as good of sound as you would in a concert hall. So I would certainly like to hear it in a concert hall before I make any sort of judgment as to which I like better.
Okay.
Yeah, I really enjoyed hearing what I could hear. The quality wasn't that great, but this was still a great experience to be able to have this and be introduced to Dr. Mormon, and also to hear all the music in its entirety with Janice White, and also hear the work of Nolan Shahid, who not only played but did all the engineering and mixing and everything, which is pretty profound. Thank you, everybody, for this opportunity.
And that's our bass player, Carl Vincent, who was able to record all the fast-moving bass lines that you had in Race Riot.
Yes, Dr.
That was
Mormon, we need to have a
powerful.
discussion.
Yes.
Janice, there's a question. How many instruments did we use for the recording?
Oh. Well, let's see. Approximately 23 people. And including the brass, the woodwinds, the percussionists. Yes. And strings, of course.
Mhm.
Live for this.
And
So
no,
I suppose we will continue this opportunity for to share the music with others by posting it on our website.
Mhm.
And then I think the sound quality, of course, will improve greatly. Is there anyone else who has a comment, or you can write in your comments one of the
Come on.
questions on our...
It's Elizabeth. Can you see me?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you see me?
Let's assume so.
Okay. I just wanted to say I enjoyed being a part of it. I wish we'd had more time to, that we could have worked together as a whole orchestra a little bit more time, but I really enjoyed being part of the project.
Oh, yes. Well, thank you for your participation as concert master. You did a
Okay.
great job, too. Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
And Nolan, someone asked where we recorded this. I'd like to give you the proper credit for this. What's the name of your studio?
It's No Sound Studio.
No Sound Studio. No Sound Studio in Pasadena.
Pasadena. Yes.
People judgment like that last week.